Welcome to the Do Something Admirable podcast. My name is Alex. My patients call me Dr. Watson or also Alex. This podcast is both a play on the name of our medical practice, Admire Medical, and the previously unspoken mission of the practice. We help our patients start their next chapter after life-changing events, like amputations, brain and spinal cord injuries, and cancer treatments. This show is for anyone looking to be inspired and then inspire others to do something admirable.
All right, Dr. Alex, we're back for another episode. Really great segment and podcast today is there's a lot of junk science out there on social media, and one of the ones absolutely is calorie deficits. Mm-hmm. So heard this great TikTok that just blew me away the other day, and it was a guy talking about calorie deficits, and he was saying like you can eat 1,600 calories in donuts. It doesn't matter what the calories are as long as you're in a calorie deficit. So what's your feeling on that?
You hear this also with the McDonald's diet, or there's I think someone did something with Oreos once and all that stuff. And this is there's a positive spin to this too, which is you can reach your goals on any diet that kind of fits with your preferences, right? So the most successful diet is going to be one that you can stick with, and if we're in your preferences, then you're going to stick with it. If your preference is only donuts, I would counsel you otherwise, but I think there's a way to make this work regardless, and that's going to be, yes, the primary thing is deficit. You need to just be in a caloric deficit, and that's how you're going to lose weight. But that deficit is fluid too. It's a very dynamic thing to determine what your deficit is, because it's going to change based on your current weight, your diet itself, your activity level, all those things. So as you are more active, of course, then your needs go up, so deficit can get easier to facilitate with the same number of calories. If you were to be in the car for 3 days straight, like I felt like I was this past weekend, then you're going to be at a lower basal metabolic rate plus activity level, and so your needs are going to decrease as well. So your needs will decrease, and then so that deficit is harder to meet.
And obviously donuts aren't the right way to go, right? And so, again, there's a little bit of comedy in the video we were watching, but realistically, the real mix is great whole foods, exercise, diet, and speaking of diet, the pivotal little bit is I know you're always asked this question: what is the best diet? And there's so many out there.
100%, and that was exactly where I wanted this to go next, because really the best diet is whatever you can stick with. So you can meet your goals on a low carb diet. You can meet your goals on a high carb diet and low fat. You can meet your goals on strictly paleo or totally vegan, whatever it is. But you just want to make sure that you're keeping track of certain macronutrients, because those are more important for health than body weight necessarily. Now, the bonuses to this, of course, are going to be that those macronutrients then can also fluctuate that set point, that demand for the day, and give you more margin in your deficit. So if your diet is more composed of protein, there's that thermic effect of food. So the amount of energy it takes to break down the food you eat. So essentially what hits your system after that breakdown demand is going to be less. So if your diet is high in protein, high in fiber, less is going to hit your essential, your checkbook of your metabolism for the day. And so you're going to feel full because that's whatever goes in your stomach, but then you're going to stay full longer, and you're going to store less as fat in the long run because that deficit is going to be there. So in the end, really there's no best diet. I used to be a big believer in the low carb. It's called a carbohydrate insulin model of metabolism here. The idea being that, hey, when you eat carbs, it jacks up your insulin. When your insulin's higher, insulin's an anabolic hormone, so it makes you store things, fat, muscle, whatever, sugar. And if you're on a carb-restricted diet and your body is secreting less insulin to manage blood sugar and different macronutrients and electrolytes and stuff, then in theory you're going to store less, and so you're going to be just burning more fat. And I was a strong believer in that, and I was a little bummed to find out that it wasn't so simple, but also it opens up the door to other ways of success when it comes to reaching weight loss goals.
How much of a factor does the intervals that you eat tie into that, in your opinion?
It still boils down to really what makes it easiest for you to stay in that deficit. So, if you can meet your protein goals, so, there is a floor in the amount of protein that I think everyone should be having to maintain muscle, to help you build muscle, maintain bone density, all that stuff, and just stay full longer. If you're able to meet that goal of 0.75 grams per pound of body weight, or as much as a gram per pound of ideal body weight, that would be great, because then you can maintain that muscle mass and really put yourself in a positive nitrogen balance to build muscle more easily. And I think I deviated from your question. What was that one again?
That was no, I think you're right. The intervals,
Okay.
the intervals, right?
Yeah.
Does it really matter? Should you eat 6 times a day? Should you eat 3 times a day? There's a lot of bro science out there about that for sure.
And I definitely subscribe to that. My undergrad personal trainer days, but if you're in a narrow eating window, so a time restricted feeding plan helps some people lose weight, because again, you're at that average daily caloric deficit. And you're able to eat enough protein in that period to maintain your needs, then your interval can be as short as once a day, or even once every couple days if you want to do that, but it sounds terrible to me. Right. Or you can spread it out.
Fasting, that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, we'll save that for later. The data on that are actually pretty interesting too, but you can easily spread it out into 6 small meals throughout the day. If you want to spend your whole day eating, there's absolutely a way for that to be a successful method of fat loss and muscle building. But what it comes down to is your schedule, how much effort you want to put into it, and can you easily meet those macros?
Right. And like everything else, right? Much like personal growth, right? It's consistency and continue to kind of do exactly what you need to do, and the better fuel you're doing, the better results you're going to have, I assume, right?
Oh, yeah.
Let's pivot more to the anatomy of it, so to speak. Is when you're losing weight, how does it work? What happens to your body? How does that happen, and what should you expect when you really start to go down that journey?
That's a good question, and there's a couple sequence of answers here. So when it comes to the anatomy and the physiology of weight loss, when you're burning fat, where does that carbon go? You're actually breathing it out. So part of where the weight goes when you're burning it off and essentially getting the energy out of those stored fat molecules and breaking the bonds and using that as energy for activities, well, you're breathing out that carbon, and so when you're breathing heavily, you're actually losing weight, more or less. But when you're looking at the kind of literal anatomy of it, the trajectory of weight loss is usually pretty quick, and then it slows down, and then this is why we use biometric scales a lot of times. So, an off-the-shelf biometric scale may not be absolutely correct, so the number is not super useful, but a series of measurements can tell you if you're going the right direction, and that's where you can better understand essentially where the weight loss is coming from. So at first, you're going to kind of be burning a little bit of everything. So in our muscles, we have what's called glycogen. That's just glucose molecules stored together as starch. You're going to be breaking that down pretty early, especially if you're doing anaerobic exercise, resistance training, sprints, things like that. As you burn off that glycogen, it is very osmotically active. So it draws a lot of fluid, water, into your muscle cells. And so you're going to be burning off the sugar and releasing all that, the water that was stored there. And so you're going to lose weight from those factors first. Yes, I'm burning fat too, of course. But you're going to lose weight from those 3 sources in the beginning. And in doing so, it may look like you lose a little muscle at first, because when you're using those biometric scales, a lot of times it's going through the muscle and saying, hey, there's a lot of water here, it conducts well. If you have better conductance, you probably have more muscle mass. So it kind of is obfuscated a little bit. But over time, you're going to see that fast drop from the burning of the glycogen and the water. Then you're going to see it slow down a little bit as that fat loss is kind of steadily going through the whole thing because of that caloric deficit that you're stimulating as well. And when you look beneath the surface of just the weight measurement on that differential in terms of fat versus muscle mass, you'll be able to see the fat loss, or the fat percentage going down as that muscle mass percentage or lean mass percentage going up, and that's going to tell you you're directionally going in the right way.
And in layman's terms, it's kind of when you get hung up too much on the number, right?
Exactly.
And your clothes may fit a little better. The scale may not be telling the true story, and that's kind of where you're going.
That's perfect. Yeah. So if you don't have a biometric scale, they're pretty cheap these days. But we have certain partners that will help us set up our patients with a biometric scale, just build the insurance and everything. Or you can get one online. That's cool too. But if you don't have that, you can just go by the actual scale, just your usual weight measurement, and then have your clothes fit. Because if your weight is leveling off and not going anywhere, but you're noticing your waist is still getting smaller, your clothes fit differently, you're tighter in the shoulders and looser down here, then you're obviously going in the direct fat, abdominally, both subcutaneous, so under the skin, but also viscerally, so around the organs. And that burns off kind of preferentially, typically, that visceral fat, because it is mobilized more quickly for that energy when you're in that new deficit. Whereas women who have kind of a pear shape or an hourglass shape and store weight subcutaneously around the hips, sometimes it's a little more stubborn to lose, but that's actually kind of evolutionarily advantageous, because that fat is less inflammatory, it's less pathologic, essentially. We use the term adiposopathic, meaning sick fat, essentially. And that visceral fat is much more sick fat and causing problems like diabetes and high blood pressure than anything stored subcutaneously on the hips, thighs, other arms, whatever. It's kind of safer.
And just going through, when somebody's really just has been just really no activity, how would you suggest that they approach getting into weight loss?
Definitely. That's a great question, and an important consideration both for safety and for logical goal setting and everything too, because the number one thing I try and avoid here is aiming too high too fast, because if you're discouraged or injured, then you're going to stop and start from square one. So first, getting into it, you can start with just an exercise plan or just a nutrition plan. If, say, the circumstances don't allow for you to exercise as much as you'd like, well, it's really the caloric deficit that you get more from nutrition anyway that's going to help you reach your goals. On the exercise side, a lot of the health benefits are more tied to increasing your exercise, because that's when your muscles release a lot of anti-inflammatory molecules and help you better regulate blood pressure and better utilize energy, so fat and sugar for energy. And so as you're burning sugar, you're going to be having less insulin resistance, so less diabetes eventually. You're going to be burning fat, and that's going to be less stored around the organs and contributing to that diabetes and blood pressure and everything. So easing into it to have that consistent progress and consistent utilization of either the exercise plan or the nutrition plan or both is a way to make that a sustainable and compounding benefit there. Yeah. So when you start, it's set reasonable goals. Number one, when it comes to the gym,
meaning don't go after 100 pounds, right?
Don't go after 100 pounds.
Go for 10.
And my goals are typically not even weight goals or even health metric goals. It's the activity goals and the nutritional goals. Because if you are hitting gains on the activity level, so you're able to run at a fraction of a faster pace next week than you did last week, right, or you're able to lift a fraction of higher weight per set of an exercise, you're going to have benefits. You have to. It's
22-minute miles spend the same way as 8-minute miles right in the end, as long as you're doing the activity.
It's doing the activity, but as the even though the distance might be the same, the pace is important, because that shows that you are making those really important adaptations to exercise that are going to be translating to those health benefits. Right. So I like to say, when you're starting out with an exercise plan, day one is figuring out what you can do consistently. Right. It always comes back to consistency. So if you find an activity that you enjoy doing, that's going to be what we build the exercise plan around. So if you like to walk, oh man, I want you walking every day if you can do it. But if not, find days where you can walk at a brisk pace. And then from there, it's, all right, well, you complement with the other half of these things. So if you like walking, or even light running, jogging, whatever, how can we add some resistance training? Because there's a good synergy between aerobic and anaerobic style training. If you're like me and you love lifting, all right, we're going to build a plan around resistance training, and make it safer, so you're protecting your joints and building muscle, and of course, again, burning all the bad stuff to put you in that caloric deficit or maintenance phase. Then we're going to pepper in an aerobic plan to figure out, okay, well, it's a different system essentially of energy metabolism. We want to make sure you get the benefits of both aspects there. Because you get a little better, if you overdo one, it's tough to get good at the other. But if you can do both to some extent and prioritize one, then you're going to find that the second one makes your first one better. So as I increase my running from 0 miles a week to 3 miles a week, my lifts tend to get better. I tend to lift a little more weight. I tend to be a little more, have better endurance in the gym. On the other side, for someone who only runs constantly and they're doing, 5 miles a day, 4 days a week, spread out, that's fantastic. I bet you if you throw in some squats and deadlifts periodically, or just some other more anaerobic style training and build a little bit of that fast twitch muscle, we'll do that a different day, talking about the muscle fiber types. If you can build different, stimulate different muscle fiber types, then you're going to notice benefits on your preferred exercise modality. And prioritizing one just a couple days a week, and then adding in that second one in the residual time, and only, you don't need to do 2 hours a day. It's like, for me, 30, 45 minutes a day, consistently,
right.
Is all you need to do. So you don't need to break your whole schedule to do this.
And let's wrap back to how we started this originally, to the last question, is there's a lot of misinformation out there, right? It's really, really tough to really certify what is good and what is bad and what is subjective. Yeah. And so let's bring it back to Admire Medical. How can Admire Medical help you if you're on that weight loss journey and you've really been in that stuck place for a while?
Oh, man. I hate to keep saying the same thing, but good question. I find that my success over the years in counseling patients comes back to finding the low-hanging fruit and then, plucking that or pulling that lever, if you want to mix some metaphors here. Because, again, if I know what you like to do or used to know how to do, we're going to start there. If I know what foods you tend to find keep you full longer, we're going to build a nutrition plan around there. If we're looking at, all right, what's the on the flip side, what's the worst things that you do, and we can just swap out some full sugar soda for some diet soda, or some sweet tea for some unsweetened iced tea, and
you're 100% right. I mean, that's what I've always found over going kind of the roller coaster of weight over the years between sports and things like that, is it's not just overnight change. The greatest success comes from, just like you said, there's incremental changes of maybe mustard instead of mayo, and there's little things that you can kind of switch out and incrementally change. That's like everything with growth, right? Is making those simple changes. So
we call them nudges. If you just nudge yourself in the right direction, it all just compounds and benefits add up, and eventually you look back and you're like, I've been doing this for a year now. I lost a ton of weight and I feel a lot better. I didn't really do much. So our counseling centers around how can we get you to make these changes without really feeling like you're done as much, because that's how you're going to be able to continue doing it.
Right.
But that's, it's a play on the name of the podcast. That's how you achieve anything worth achieving, or anything admirable, is that
that's right.
You got to just acknowledge that the biggest gains are made by understanding what can be accomplished in a year, 2 years, 5 years. As everyone's been saying recently, we overestimate what we can do in a short period of time, and then totally underestimate what we can do in a longer period of time. And understanding that if you can build on a little bit of progress every single day, you're going to be able to make some huge changes to how you feel, how you look, how long you're going to live, how much activity you can do in your older age. And you can pay it forward.
So, in the subject of nudge, right? If somebody wants to really just go forward and work with you, what do they expect? What do you recommend they do? Make an appointment, have a consult?
Yeah, we have this partnership with ZocDoc now, or we signed up for the service technically, so it's a partnership in that case. And you can book an appointment online. Now, right now it's myself and Angela are stellar NP. Some folks prefer to book with me. Some folks prefer to book with her. No offense taken. It's just different styles, right? And her background similarly is in weight loss medicine, but on the internal medicine side of things. So not as much tied to the rehab medicine side of things. So we can work as a team to come at this at different angles. So in some cases, folks start with me and then go to her. Some folks start with her and then come to me, and we complement each other in terms of addressing the issues that are stopping you from making those changes. So really, I'd say if you want to work with us, you book an appointment online. It doesn't matter who you pick to start, because we're both going to get you started in a direction.
Right?
In the end,
right.
we're going to tag team it anyway.
Right.
So anytime that I have a little head scratcher on the internal medicine side, Angela and I can collaborate. If she has an issue with, hey, this patient wants to do this thing, but the pain is stopping them, then I might jump in and we can work behind the scenes together to improve the patient's pain so they can do the exercise they want to do.
Makes sense.
Alternatively, you can give us a call. And we have different programs set up too. So the base case of what we do here is insurance based reimbursements here. We are credentialed with all the local insurers, so no one really has an issue with that aspect of things. But we also have programs that are kind of hybrid models, so cash-based to cover things that insurance doesn't cover, that we provide through the practice. So we have deals with compounding pharmacy in the area, and this way we can provide, if a medication like Ozempic, semaglutide is the active ingredient, if that's not covered by insurance for a lot of people, because right now A, there's a shortage of it, but B, they're understandably strict in terms of the criteria to prescribe it, we have ways of getting that for appropriate patients.
Yep.
We're not going to prescribe it to anybody who's inappropriate, because that takes away from the folks who need it and also puts them, the people that don't need it at risk if they're taking it.
Right.
But those cash-based programs allow us to get these special kind of add-ons to the treatment plan at a discount, and then provide the extra value and extra service to the patient that lets them schedule quickly, have long appointments. In the future, we're going to have a partnership with our local massage therapies, massage therapy practices. We will help subsidize a gym membership, and so we can this way make sure that you're able to be active and walk you through any hurdles that might get in the way, and let you just focus on the weight loss and the exercise.
And this is important, because somebody who struggled with weight my whole life, right, is you feel like there's always two options. There's kind of your general practitioner, and you feel there's the weight loss surgery clinic.
Right.
And you guys are kind of firmly in between, really educating and putting together programs that really help. And I commend you for that on the patient side, because again, this isn't the easiest thing to figure out sometimes, right? It's you need help, and when you need help, you got to reach out for it. And you guys are a great source for that overall, just from the education standpoint alone, let alone programs and practices and things like that. So
thanks, Mike. Yeah, really, we kind of had to start with the cash-based aspect of things, because I can be a little long-winded when it comes to enjoying talking about this too much, and so the usual 15-minute, 20-minute appointments didn't really cut it in terms of completing the picture of some of these plans. And so, the hybrid membership with the cash-based system allows us to really go above and beyond and just needle through every single contributing factor, your poor sleep, your pain, family histories that may contribute to propensity for weight gain, because there's all those genetic components that are factoring in there. And some folks, without being able to see the big picture because of kind of very focused training style, just don't know what they don't know kind of thing. And not that I'm the be all end all here, but having a different perspective, I think, adds to the benefit the patients can receive. And again, it lets you get to your goals without feeling like you're just constantly restricted or constantly focused on where they can squeeze in a couple extra steps, or staring at someone else who's eating their favorite food but looking down at their plate that's a bunless burger and a side of mushroom or something. So that's part of why I bias, but why I think we do it better.
Yeah, agreed. All right, we have come to the end, my friends, and we'll tune in next time.
Thanks for tuning in to Do Something Admirable podcast. We'll see you next time.